doesn't mean that the Border Patrol agent who shot him saw the gun being removed, Pierce. That is a part of the investigation.
Brandon, please. We've listened to this enough. For starters, your whole spin is crazy. Brandon, shut up for a second.
How law works.
It finally happening, guys. Republicans are beginning to turn on Trump. To tell you truth, I saw this coming because there is no way someone does all he has done and gets away with it. And now the mask's slipping live on telly. This isn't one bad incident. It's a system built on blind loyalty, force, and excuses. If you love explosive content like this and want to see more, click that subscribe button.
Well, anybody who'd seen the footage of Alex Preddy's shooting knew it just didn't stack up. And the same can be said about many of the arguments put forward to effectively justify his death. This was one of the most popular.
Number one, the Second Amendment is a right. I'm a Second Amendment absolutist. You have the right to carry a weapon to defend yourself, not the privilege. It is a right. Those rights come with restrictions. I think you would understand that more than anyone at this table. One of those restrictions is you have to have your ID and your permit on you. We don't know. Current reports are he didn't have either one of those on, at which point he's not carrying legally.
Fine, that's all true. But we know that he did have a permit for his gun. And the law says he has to show it when requested to do so. Where in the footage did any of the officers stop to ask him for his paperwork? And why was Kyle Rittenhouse a hero for not using his common sense, but Alex Preddy caused his own death by not using his common sense? The only thing Preddy was brandishing was his iPhone, which has also become an unlikely source of contention.
I want to show you something. Does that look like a gun? I think it does a little bit. It's a phone. It's black, like most phones. That's crazy stuff.
Well, crazy stuff is correct. Many people were justifiably furious with Biden officials and liberal media personalities who repeatedly told them to disbelieve their lying eyes, not least about Biden's own health. They were also furious about the idea that angry white conservatives were domestic terrorists and the single greatest threat to America. Most of those people voted for President Trump because they were sick of it. They didn't give his enforcers a mandate to repeat the exact same playbook. Well, joining me to discuss all this is Tim Miller, the commentator with The Bulwark, Jonathan Fahey, he's the former acting ICE director, Brandon Tatum, a.k.a. the Officer Tatum, and Brian Tyler Cohen, host of No Lies. So welcome to all of you. Tim Miller, it seems to me it's been a very significant 48 hours, actually, for Donald Trump, for his administration, for the wider public, and for this issue of trust and being able to believe what we see with our own eyes. Because if you listen to what these administration officials were saying in the immediate aftermath of this killing, then this guy, Alex Preddy, was about to launch a massacre of law enforcement officers, when we could all see from the various clips that were coming out that that simply wasn't true. He was defending a woman protester who'd been thrown on the floor. He was then thrown on the floor himself. Yes, he had a weapon on him, but at no stage did he brandish that weapon or represent any threat to the 8 ICE officers that engulfed him. And in fact, they took away his gun and then they killed him.
Right. So, speaking of excuses, because that's always the move, isn't it? The second the footage starts circulating, the right-wing commentariat doesn't ask, what happened? They ask, how do we frame it? And then, surprise, they frame Alex Preddy as some looming threat like he was about to start a war, when what we're reportedly seeing is a man stepping in as a woman protester gets thrown to the floor. And I'm sorry, but hang on, this is where the gaslighting kicks in. Because they want you to believe that intervening, that putting your body in the way, that saying no, you don't get to manhandle people for existing, is somehow the same as attacking law enforcement. It's not. It's civic instinct, it's human instinct. And then they do this grotesque little pivot, well, he had a gun. As if the same crowd that treats the Second Amendment like a holy text suddenly becomes a bunch of anxious safety inspectors the moment the person with the gun isn't on their team. A society where asserting your rights gets you killed. That's not law and order. That's fear, dressed up as policy.
Yeah, Officer Tatum, welcome back to Uncensored. I mean, the really frustrating thing for Donald Trump must be that a large part of his immigration policy has been extremely successful and well received. And I'm talking specifically about the basic closure of the southern border. You know, after years of Biden allowing millions of people to come in illegally, Trump has stopped it. That's a great win for his administration. It's something most Americans agree with. And yet here he is now getting quite negative polling about his immigration policies. And I think it's all come down to this issue of how the ICE agents are behaving in these rural areas and these back-to-back shootings, deadly shootings, of protesters.
Well, it's because of mindless people like the gentleman that just finished speaking is the reason why people have this perception that Donald Trump is somehow doing something wrong. They deported 600,000 people. They've deported people who have committed murder, rape, all kinds of dangerous and felonious crimes. Also, they're deployed in all 50 states. Why is Minnesota the only state that's having issues? And then to get on TV and say that a guy is observing the First Amendment and Second Amendment while he's at a protest assaulting ICE agents, Border Patrol agents. He committed an assault, a felonious assault against the ICE agent. That's how he got into a physical altercation while carrying a firearm without notifying them.
What was the assault? When
the Border Patrol pushed the lady, he went hands on. That is a felony. You cannot do that.
He didn't assault anyone. But Brandon, here's the problem.
Is that not a felony crime?
When you say what you witnessed was an assault,
to physically assault.
Brandon, when you say hang on, let me finish.
Piers,
when you say what you witnessed was an assault by Alex Preddy on ICE officers, that is not what I witnessed.
Piers, do you because you don't live in America, you've never done law enforcement, you don't understand the law. And with all due respect,
I've got a home in America. I've lived in America on and off for 20 years.
But I'm saying you are not vested in American law enforcement. When you grab somebody like Preddy did with an ICE agent, that is an assault, subject to an arrest. They had every right to take him down to the ground. He had a gun on him knowingly, came with multiple magazines.
But you should agree with that.
Well, I don't agree with that.
Look, I was defamed there.
Well, hang on. Let me finish.
A Border Patrol agent.
Yeah, I will come back. Brandon,
if you want to peacefully protest, you can carry a gun.
Brandon,
you can't assault and get into a conflict.
Fine. I spent 20 years working and living in America a lot of the year, right? So I know America very well. I've covered a lot of these stories over the years for CNN, for others, for Fox, for others, everyone, right? So you don't have to slightly patronize me with you're not from these parts.
I'm not patronizing. I'm just telling you the truth because
I have a home.
Having actual experience in law enforcement is a big difference.
Let me finish. I've owned a home in Los Angeles for 16 years, okay? So I do understand how law enforcement works in America. I understand what the law is, right? I understand all of these things. But I look at what happens. Immediately you say that if you take a gun to a protest, but that's exactly what I've heard.
No, when you fight people when you fight
hang on, Brandon.
While having a gun.
I haven't finished my question. For 20 years, I've battled with the NRA and with the conservative right about this issue of guns in America. And I eventually concluded this is an issue for Americans to resolve amongst yourselves. I respect that. It's your country, your culture, your laws, your guns. However, there is a blazing hypocrisy in this narrative that's been spewed about Alex Preddy that somehow one of the problems here was he was carrying a gun. He was carrying it legally.
No, the problem is not carrying a gun.
Under his Second Amendment right.
And here's where my head just short circuits. Because the minute you challenge the storyline, they don't answer you. They rebrand reality. They start doing that classic right-wing parlor trick. Make the victim sound like an action movie villain and the armed state sound like a trembling little lamb. So we get this argument, brace yourself, that a phone looks like a gun. A phone. In 2026, when every human being on Earth is holding a rectangular black slab all day, every day. And I'm sat there thinking, hang on, are we now saying simply existing in public with an iPhone is probable cause for a firing squad? Is that the standard? And then Brandon Tatum, of course, slides in with the common sense lecture. Not rights, not due process. Common sense, which is just code for if an agent panics, you die, and we call it maturity. If you comply perfectly while being swarmed, you might survive. How generous. They keep equating carrying with threatening. And speaking of false equivalences, notice how fast they forget who's always screaming Second Amendment until it's politically inconvenient. Tell me I'm not the only one hearing that nonsense.
The problem is not carrying a gun. The problem is getting into a physical altercation with intentionally and premeditated a physical altercation with ICE agents. I would never, I carry a gun everywhere I go. I got my gun on me right now. I would never confront or get in a physical altercation with any law enforcement with a gun on me. You learn that in CCW class and as a person with common sense. Because what happens? Things get twisted up. You have the gun get exposed. They yell, gun, gun, gun. He's reaching for his waistband. They think he has a gun. All of that is going to be justification under the law because the perception of the Border Patrol agent that believed that he was armed and dangerous at the time that he fired the shots is going to be justification.
They took his gun away.
For anybody on this panel. Just like
they took his gun away. We literally see them take his gun off him, and then they kill him.
That doesn't mean that the Border Patrol agent who shot him saw the gun being removed, Pierce. That is a part of the investigation.
Brandon, please. We've listened to this enough. For starters, your whole spin is crazy. This idea that you started your thing by saying this was justified because the Border Patrol agent came and pushed a woman to the ground. Why are Border Patrol agents, excuse me, sir, let me continue. Why are Border Patrol agents in Minneapolis, nowhere near the border, pushing American citizen women to the ground? Brandon, shut up for a second.
In case you don't understand how law works, they have jurisdiction to enforce immigration law within the boundaries of the city. Yeah, what the heck are you talking about?
Was she an immigrant? Was she an illegal immigrant?
Who?
They pushed an American citizen to the ground. We have rights, Brandon.
The
entire Minneapolis police force.
Do you not understand law?
Shut up, Brian. Brandon, whatever your name is, the entire Minneapolis police force shot 0 bullets all year last year.
Bro, I'm a grown
0
man.
bullets.
You want a problem with me?
Law enforcement works for us.
That's what I thought.
They don't get to shoot American citizens
they
10 times and shoot 6 bullets into our dead bodies. They don't get to push down women. They work for us. They represent us. We pay them. They need to use restraint and de-escalate. Okay, they are here there to serve and protect us, not to push women around, not to shoot guys in the back of the head.
Time out, guys.
Citizens executing their rights, and they got murdered. And you're on here defending them like a ghoul.
All right, like a
legal justification.
Okay, hang on.
He's dead.
Time out, please. I want to.
And there it is. That slippery little pivot. It's all about perception. Right, so now we're doing feelings-based policing, are we? Because apparently if an agent thinks something, if the vibes are off, then unloading rounds becomes justification. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But hang on, because I can already hear the same crowd who chant shall not be infringed, suddenly turning into, well, you should have taken a class, you should have known better, you should have anticipated the state panicking. Sorry, since when is the burden on the citizen to preempt an officer's overreaction? That's not responsibility. That's surrender. And speaking of surrender, notice the gymnastics. They admit the gun was taken, then immediately go, yeah, but maybe the shooter didn't see that. Okay, so the system is allowed to be chaotic, poorly coordinated, and trigger happy, and we're supposed to call that reasonable? Meanwhile, if the politics were different, if the protester had the right bumper sticker, suddenly it's restraint, due process, benefit of the doubt. Funny that. This is selective absolutism. Rights for thee, conditions for everyone else.
I want to bring in Jonathan Fay because you're a former acting ICE director. But first I want to play a clip from Donald Trump about the gun part of this.
That being said, you can't have guns. You can't walk in with guns.
What about the Second Amendment?
Listen, you can't walk in with guns. You can't do that. But it's just a very unfortunate incident.
Do you agree with the assessment from some of your own officials that Alex Preddy is a domestic terrorist or an assassin?
Well, I haven't heard that, but certainly he shouldn't have been carrying a gun. But I don't like that he had a gun. I don't like that he had 2 fully loaded magazines. That's a lot of bad stuff. And despite that, I say that's a very unfortunate.
Now, the thing is, Jonathan Fay, I've repeatedly heard Donald Trump say he's the biggest Second Amendment guy in America, right? How does that square with what he's saying there about this protester who was there, had a lawful right to have a firearm and the ammunition? He's saying he shouldn't have taken it, but that's a repudiation of his constitutional rights, isn't it?
I don't think so at all, and I don't view it the same way in that, yeah, you have a right to carry a firearm, but that also comes with responsibilities. I know Tim's rolling his eyes there, but the thing is, What the issue is here is this person injected himself in the situation, and I'm not going to come to a conclusion because I don't know what happened, but he injected himself into a law enforcement situation, and he was armed, and he went there. He didn't go there to protest, my understanding. These people weren't holding up signs saying open borders, mass amnesty. He was injecting himself into a situation to interfere with ICE doing their jobs. The legal issue, and you don't just come out and say it's murder if someone dies. The issue is, did this officer have a reasonable belief that his life or the lives of others were in danger of being lost or being seriously injured? And one thing, hang on a second, Tim. It's important from the officer's perspective and what's reasonable, and they are in this high-pressure situation. And the fact that the gun was removed, that's a factor, but it's not the only factor because you don't know in these situations, does he have another gun or something else to make someone safe? So the questions you want to ask are,
did any of your agents ever fire 10 bullets into an American citizen? Did that ever happen when you were acting director? Did they ever fire 10 bullets into an American citizen?
Tim, if you could
did that ever happen?
A little bit.
Did you ever do that?
Look, I can answer the question if you want. Are you performing, or can I just answer?
No, I'm asking. It's a fair question. Did that ever happen? You were the acting director. Did any of your agents ever kill American citizens?
Don't speak over each other.
Pierce, are we here to talk about this, or is it just
don't talk over? Yeah, I agree.
What is this?
Let's not talk over each other. So I think the question Tim is asking is a reasonable one.
I know the emasculated males are up in arms, Tim, but come on.
All right, but
you're saying
Jonathan,
the problem is that I would say the person that was
please don't talk over each other. Guys,
he just called me an emasculated male.
I
would say
please don't talk over each other. Guys.
And speaking of conditions, let's talk about what happens right after that, because this is where the mask slips clean off. You've got Trump, allegedly Mr. Biggest Second Amendment guy, suddenly doing the whole, you can't have guns, you can't walk in with guns. Oh, so now it's vibes-based gun rights, is it? Rights when it's your crowd outside a state capital, and very unfortunate when it's someone you can paint as an enemy. Convenient, predictable, pathetic. And then the former ICE director comes in with the same little script. Responsibilities, high-pressure situation, reasonable belief. Right, and I'm sorry. If the standard is simply what an agent believes in the moment, then you don't have rights. You have permissions, renewable, annually, at gunpoint. Here's the reality. This isn't one bad call. It's a policy atmosphere. When you empower aggressive enforcement, smear dissent as terrorism, and reward escalation, you get deaths. So yeah, my call to you is simple. Don't swallow the narrative. Demand independent investigations. Demand body cam transparency. Demand accountability. And vote like your civil liberties depend on it. Because they do.
We're seeing from Stephen Miller, from Greg Bovino, Kristi Noem, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, the same thing, frankly, that we're seeing on this panel right here, which is this level of gaslighting and kind of narrative setting that, frankly, nobody believes. I mean, this idea for the former ICE director, my co-panelist over here, that Alex Preddy, this VA nurse who was brandishing a cell phone, was somehow a threat that even after he had 6 full-grown men, like these grown-ass men on top of him, that he needed to be that the threat had to be eliminated by unloading his clip into him. I mean, you can say this and you can feel justified, and we'll have Officer Tatum over here back you up because there's nothing that Trump or any of these secret police or the Trump administration can do that will garner any pushback. But that right there is the perfect testament to why nobody believes what's happening here. It's because even these ardent right-wingers in this country, and certainly the vast, vast, vast majority of independents, I'm talking 3/4 of independents in this country, are listening to this gaslighting and recognizing that it's not just a lie they're being told, but it's utter contempt that's being displayed by these Trump administration officials for the American people. Say again?
Well, I would say, Brian, as well.
What did I say that was gaslighting?
That this idea that Alex Preddy posed some threat where the response needed to be unloading his clip.
The question to be resolved.
And it's not going to be resolved because the reality is DHS is not going to investigate any of this. DHS isn't going to investigate anything Preddy's going to do. Just like DHS, just like DHS is not going to investigate Jonathan Ross because DHS doesn't investigate any of this stuff. So if the excuse is always going to be, oh, don't worry, we'll get to the bottom of this in some full investigation. There's not going to be a full investigation.
Should he be charged with murder? So we just have to listen to the gaslighting being fed to us by Stephen Miller, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Kristi Noem.